talk about industrial relations because, Jason Falinski, you and a couple of your Liberal colleagues wrote a fascinating piece in the Financial Review this week. Let me quote from it.
Thank you.
The system,
thank you, David. I thought it was quite fascinating.
You talk about the IR system, you say the system lacks collaboration, pragmatism and fairness, much less being an aid for productivity. Now, as I say, you've been in government 6 years. That's a pretty damning indictment. How have things got so bad on your watch?
Well, thank you for putting it in those terms, David. I really appreciate you framing the debate that way. And by the way, that's sarcasm. Look, I think the piece was mostly aimed at saying that it's almost 10 years to the day that the Fair Work Act came into force. The question is, how has that Act evolved as time has gone on over that 10-year period? And I think when you go and look at the documents that Julia Gillard issued in 2007, which was called Forward with Fairness, and you judge the outcomes of the Fair Work Act against that document, there is some places where the Act could be improved. Now, that's not to have a go at Julia Gillard, that's not what we're seeking to do, or to have a go at the Fair Work Act.
So what are the improvements? What are the improvements you'd like?
Well, I mean, the key improvement we would like to see is a more collaborative industrial relations framework where employers and employees can speak to each other openly about what changes they can make in the workplace that improves their lives, their jobs, their enterprises, and that ultimately flows through into higher wages, more employment opportunities, etc. So they're the sorts of changes that we're looking at. But you know what? If you just go and look back at Forward with Fairness, Julia Gillard has some really great ideas in there, and they're probably worth going back and saying, maybe we need to amend the Fair Work Act to take into account of, firstly, how some of the laws got interpreted, which was not her intention, the way that they got interpreted, and secondly, how the labour force or the labour market has changed in the intervening period of 10 years. And
but I think in terms of an actual change, I mean, I hear what you're saying, that you want workers and bosses to talk more and work together. What do you need to change to do that?
Well, for example, we cite in that article an example of a construction company that in 2012 started the process of an enterprise agreement. By 2015 it abandoned that process because it was getting tripped up at every hearing in front of the Fair Work Commission, and so they decided just to go back and get it and start again, so the technical requirements, they wouldn't keep falling over. 2 years later, the company and its workforce voted and approved an enterprise agreement, and it was in November 2017. They took that to the Fair Work Commission. In March of 2018, a union that has no members at that enterprise sought the right of automatic representation. It was granted that right by the Fair Work Commission, which is allowed under the Act. In April of that year, another union then complained to the Fair Work Commission that it should have the automatic right of representation.
Third parties should not be able to intervene.
David, you've got to hear the whole story. Basically, what then happens is...
I
know.
We don't
so
have all
what
the time
happens
we'd
is...
like, but...
No, I know. But what happens is the Commission rules that one union has representation over the other. They then take it to a full bench hearing. The full bench hearing overturns the original Commissioner. They then take that to the Federal Court. By the way, at this point, this has now taken 18 months.
So what's the change, just quickly? What's the change you'd like here?
I think, for example, that where a company and its workforce agree on an enterprise agreement, that the Fair Work Commission should certainly sign off on that and make sure that it meets better off overall tests.
So third parties can't get involved.
But why are registered organisations without any members, without any representation, able to fight amongst themselves and hold that process up for more than